It's finally home, and I have the important piece of paper. Lots of hold-ups, mostly not in my control. The bit of a medical emergency at the garage wiped out the MOT tester for a while, but it's here, it's passed. A few advisories, a couple of corroded brake lines, which I will sort out when I redo the front end. Brakes still binding, but again, that'll be sorted out when I swap the caliper out. So that's all cool from a electromechanical point of view. A bit more coupler noise than I would like, and there's something else rattling as well. So I'll have to do a bit of diagnosis on that. But I can enjoy it now. It can be a rolling project rather than a sat on my drive project. Terrible timing to get a cabrio back just as a week of thunderstorms start. But what can I say? It's just another wet day in the north. Now that the car's back, can crack on with the next steps, starting with putting in a BMS. This was my BMS, the Spaceballs ESP32 that has evolved from the open source version of SyncBMS. I put this in the other day and was just going to test it out before I did a video about it. Plugged it in with this nice connector. It actually lives in a case which bolts down here. And I got some snap, crackle and pop. The magic smoke came out. I don't know if you can see this on the video, but there is a sort of smoky hole in, I think it's an MCP 2515 CAN bus chip. There's another one which you won't be able to see, but well, maybe you can. CAN naught underscore U1 there is also a little bit toasty, and possibly some others as well. I've just been doing some diagnosis as to why that happened, and it's for a very simple reason. I managed to, on just two connections, transpose 1 and 4. So unfortunately, L4 is, have I got that right? Yeah, L4 is the 3v3 output from this board, in case you need 3v3 somewhere. It's got two 5-volt outputs as well. And L1 is the 12-volt input. So I managed to dump 12 volts onto the 3v3 line of this board. Amazingly, the ESP32 module was undamaged, and thankfully I have a spare. So I've just really badly soldered this up now. I see it in the light. I'm waiting to install some new lights in my cellar. I can't really see what I'm doing very well. That'll go back downstairs for a tidy up. But yeah, I've just redone this, so I will plug it in and test it with the dead board to make sure I haven't done anything stupid again. And then this board, once I've tidied up the soldering, can go in. Quick bit of phone footage. Not a lot of space under here. We're just installing the heater. The hardware at least, mostly because I want to get it out of my home workshop and all the pipework that'll go with it to get it plumbed in. And then I can put a box back in the lockup and have a bit more space. So it just needs 12 volts and CAN bus. I've got the connector for it. HV wiring in to one of the spare junction ports on the inverter so that it can only be turned on when the contactors are closed, and just makes for a neater wiring anyway. This is an Outlander unit. Never actually had it running, but Jamie runs this one on his car and has all the code to control it. So I shall just snaffle that once it's all wired in. I'm going to do a closed loop through the heater matrix with a separate pump and separate reservoir, because I don't want to be heating and then cooling the water that I'm using for cooling the motor. And the charger, that water's already getting quite toasty, up to about 60 degrees yesterday on a long charge. Connector all wired up. Pair the instructions on the open inverter forum, so I can stick that in and route the wires up into the under the bonnet and get that added in. That's one thing out of the way. Not the most important thing probably, but something simple that I could fit in a short space of time. Wiring's in, not sheathed it all yet, but runs up around there. I'm sharing the earth with the brake booster. Runs up around the top joins here, alternating between the connector for the brake booster, which goes one way, and the connector for the heater, which goes the other, so they don't get mixed up. Also a slightly different gauge of wire. And then CAN bus as well, which will tie in to the CAN bus loop. HV worked out which one of these, I've moved the connector now, but is the guide on the Open Inverter forum as to which is positive, which is negative. And you still need to make some better grommetty things to go in here, you know what I mean, but that will go in there like that. And we'll put some sealant and some sort of sealing and protection around it, and then yeah, heater is wired in. So I need to clamp the wires up a little bit, get some cable ties in down there, make it all nice and neat and tidy, but that's kind of pleasing. It's a couple of days later. I'm only doing short clips on my phone rather than getting the camera set up properly because I'm very limited on time. This is just squeezed between meetings and things. Plugged in the BMS, having got the code sorted with the help of Jamie and the Spaceballs crew. I'll post a link to the repo for that, albeit it doesn't, well, I don't know if it works at the moment, but it at least boots up and you can get access to it. But I was getting nothing out of my modules. Possible that when I plugged it in the wrong way I fried them, but actually I don't think it is that. So I have a tap into the CAN bus here for the modules, which goes down to the battery box underneath here where my 5 BMW modules are. I created an extra tap so that I could hook in the second pack via a CAN bus bridge at some point. There'll be a connector out here somewhere. Out here maybe, don't know exactly yet, but there'll be an extra connector for that, and maybe some other wires as well, which will run to the rear pack. And yeah, anyway, if I hook up a multimeter to this, I've just checked continuity, so these wires connect through to here okay, so there's nothing wrong on this side. Unfortunately, that means that the problem is either in the connection between these wires and the original BMW loom which goes down into the pack, or worst case, it's actually in the pack. And so what I'm not finding is any resistance. I think there should be a termination resistor on those modules somewhere. And if I stick this onto resistance, and then put my other probe on here, you'll see that resistance remains infinite. Therefore, there's no termination resistor, which means probably there's a bad connection somewhere. So I'll try cutting these bits up and then taking that tape off and just checking the connection there. But if that's not the problem, then it means taking all of this apart and taking the lid off the battery box. Possibly even taking the battery box out if I can't get to all the bolts. Either way, it's not a job for in between meetings. I'm in my very messy home workshop. That's the output of my bench power supply, which I haven't actually screwed down yet since I put these desks in. Running 12 volts into the ESP32 bottles board back here. I've quickly made up another plug and a little loom to hook into the spare battery pack I have on my test bench. Hooked into the laptop. I'd forgotten how much progress I'd made with this test bench. I've not looked at it for months. But this is the preparation for project 2. Anyway, go into the software in here, and in some ways good, in some ways bad. Good because I'm getting exactly the same result. So if I hit 6 cells present reset, still not showing any cells, so I don't think I have to take my battery pack apart, which is good. There's something else wrong, just need to work out what it is. Bit of back and forth. Seems likely that the problem's actually software in the porting over to ESP32, which frankly has been done in spare time by Jamie. I've done very little work on it because he's actually a coder and I'm not.
But it does seem like there's some bits wrong in there, and Jamie and Stephen actually going through the code the other day found some errors. I haven't implemented them in my code yet, the fixes anyway. I've certainly implemented the errors, but I haven't implemented the fixes yet to test it. But that'll be a future video because I'm running out of time again. So closer, got the hardware in, got the BMS hardware wired in, got the heater wired in, need a controller for that, but that also means putting in heater controls in the cabin, so some interior work. And once the BMS is in, we can do two things. We can automate charging in theory. Again, all the wiring for that's done. We should be able to get to the point where we just plug in the charger, the car wakes up, charges itself and shuts down again. And we should be able to look at putting instruments in as well. So actually I know how much battery power and range I've got left while I'm driving, which would be a very nice thing to add. But all that to come. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. See you on the next one. Oh, and by the way, 1,000 subscribers. Really nice little milestone to hit. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.